registration, I'm using registration DTO, and in the registration DTO, this is what you need, and even more, right? However, if I could give it the role and a few bits and pieces like the username and maybe the email address and the first name and last name, it will work fine. You could send the messages to the clients. Like for example, I've got the first name, last name. The user is generated, so you don't need to pass the user in. I need to make sure row is there. If I omit out any of these, apart from the first name, it will still create a user. It will still create a user, and that's why we use the DTO in the project to manage it and make it easy. Now you can use the library to omit out all these setters and getters, but I wanted it to be here so I could visualize it in my eyes. So we got entity user, and I've got users because it is a reserved word. User, if you are implementing the user details interface, if you are implementing that particular interface, you have to use the word users. Sorry, for the database table, you have to use users as well because it's user is a reserved word, and that's why I'm using users there. And here you have to, the class has to be users because user is a reserved word for user details. And you can see how I've got the setters and getters here as well. Row is basically the roles for the user. So I'm thinking about admin and any other user that will come into the system to use it. And so that's why I've got a row set up as well. Then we go login DTO. That's also just for the login bit, where you require the user and a token to log in. Where you use the password really to log in, but yeah, you need a token to log in. Let me go into users. I'm going to my test. In order to log in, you need a username and a password, and then the user. Okay, so this one here is not really that important, so let's go to the authenticator controller. Yeah, so yeah, this is the endpoint. The authenticator controller uses the, yeah, so it just uses a hash map where you are required to enter the username and password and do it. So this particular username was just from the beginning when we needed to log in. I don't really need this class. It's not needed. The user don't need to store an image in this long process. Now the most important, one of the most important table is also called receiver. That's also a user in a way, right? But it's the receiver. They don't need to log into the system and stuff like that. That's why I've separated that one from the users, because I don't think it makes sense to create it as a user. A user needs to log into the system and manage their thing and make the call, but a call receiver don't have to. All we need is their number really. The user guide, the documentation does say that you need to enter the customer's details and stuff like that. So I think at some point I'm gonna add the first name and last name of the customer, right? And then the number is definitely important. That's why I've got the number here, and that we got a table as well for it, which is called receiver. And so I mean this is in a very good shape. And then we got the call, which is the one of the most important table, which is also linked to the receiver and the user. So the user that makes the call and the receiver that receives the call, and then all that stuff as well. Address is really for the user and also the receiver as well. I'm not quite sure where I'm gonna take it. I don't need an address for the user, but I'm thinking about it in the long term if you want to do some sort of marketing. you want an address of a user, right? Because it will be a table that is used by both the user, and also because we need to set up because we need to set up sort of like I mean, the reason why I've separated really is because I want to use it for the user, and I also want to use it for the caller. So this is what you see here is a mess, but basically that's what this table is for. At some point, at the moment, I'm not making use of it, but I'll be able to store the customer address in there, or the call receiver's address in there, and also I'll be able to store the user's address in there. But I want to leave it as optional at the moment, and that's why I've said separated this table. At some point I might link it, but right now it's a big table for me, but it should be storing a user ID or a call receiver ID, right? And I need to make sure that the relationship that I'm creating is good. It will be similar to what I've got here, like a call is linked to a user and a receiver, so the address will be linked to. I'm not quite sure how I'm gonna do this, but I want it to be able, the user to be able to record the address if they want to. But the main thing this address table is for the call receiver, because the requirement is to enter the user's the call receiver's details. That's what it says in the user guide, if I quite remember. I mean, so this is the background checks of what we've got here, the tables we've got here, and how it works. Let's have a look at the repository. Let's have a look at user repository. So this is where the JPA repository extends the JPA repository. Is an interface, and this is all the method that you want to use in your service, right? You make those calls through the user repository. So for example, not the user report, but through the repository. So for example, if we go to the user service, and if we go back to user repository, so we've got a thing that says find by username. That's a method. If you go to the service, we will find by you. So we got a method that says find by username, and then we are somehow using so we are making a call to that method, and we are passing the username that the user has, username that the user enters, and then we are using that method from that interface, the user repository, and then we are storing into a user. So, and then we are returning it back to the user at this point. I will go into a bit more depth of these method and what they are used for. For example, for that username, if we just do a test here, we will find that we'll be able to call a username. I'm not quite sure which one it is because I haven't used it for a while, but we'll be able to call a username, get a username with a password. No, I mean, this is not, but we'll be able to get a username through that bit by entering a username. I don't know why I've got it like that, but you can see how this thing is still needs some sort of development. If we go back to, so that's what the repository is used for, and the user service is basically like a business logic. You handle all those logic here, but you go through the repository to get the JPA method. So the repository is really good because it has it manages all, like all the stuff that you want to delete, get all, find all those things are actually there for you to use without you having to do much or write anything really, provided that you follow the instructions. I'm trying to look for a place where Yeah, for example, in this repository, this is the core repository, and here too, yeah, I'm doing something similar where I'm finding a call by the call ID. There were so many other stuff that I was trying to do, but in the end, I found a different way. The call receiver is much more interesting, isn't it? Yeah, because the call receiver is very complicated. How I created the relationship between a call, a user, the person who is calling, and the receiver. So you can see how I've commented quite a lot of stuff here because I was doing so many stuff here. So find by, call receiver, all these are method written in JPA that you can use. Find by telephone, as long as you've got a property called telephone within the entity, then you are good to go. It will work for you. Yeah, so I think at some point I'll go into step by step what each one of them doing, and the bit to go over. So I mean, those are the pieces that you need. You need a repository, a user service, an entity class, which is modules. I have got exception here. You manage your exceptions as well in a class, which is really good, so you can reuse it in other places. Then I've got the controllers where all the endpoints and then stuff like that are managed. Yeah, so this will be the end of this video for now, because it's a long process. I will try and do more videos where I'm explaining myself a lot more. Until then, thank you for coming to my channel. Enjoy your day.